Hello, Guitar Smarts fans. Before you check out this podcast, I want to make you aware of a cool new place where you can interact with other Guitar Smarts listeners. It's a Facebook group called the Guitar Geek Hangout. That's where we hang out and talk about all things guitar. So, if you like the Guitar Smarts podcast, come and chat with Kieran and myself over in the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook. Maybe check out some pre-podcast clips and even get involved in asking and answering lots of questions from the other page dwellers. Hope to see you there. There's things that are fundamental to what you're hearing sometimes when you listen to a record that you forget are even there. Like, for example, let's say you're trying to get one of my favourite clean tones ever is from Slow Dancing in the Burning Room, John Mayer, So it's this amazing kind of neck pickup Strat tone that he got on that. And you think, well, that's a Strat into a Dumble or a 2-rock, proper loud, high headroom, clean amp, and then you try and set up a rig like that and you think, well, I just can't quite get the same thing. But you're forgetting that what the actual signal chain there really is the guitar into an amp, into a very specific microphone, a very specific preamp, into an analog desk that's then been treated and EQ'd afterwards, that's then been mixed and then mastered, and that guitar tone you're hearing actually may be somewhat unrecognisable to the sound that Mayer heard in the room. Greetings, welcome back to the Guitar Smarts podcast. This week we are grateful for the suggestions of our friends over on the Guitar Geek Hangout page on Facebook. We asked what you might like to hear us talk about and you spoke. This week we're taking inspiration from our listeners Fred Simpson and Ollie Browning, who both asked similar questions related to tone. Of all the famous guitar rigs there are, whose would we choose to play through if we could? And along with that, we talk about tone philosophy. Is it good to chase the tone of someone else, or does finding your own voice on the guitar go hand in hand with creating your own sound? Is there a more tantalising topic for guitarists than that which speaks about our beloved guitar tone? I fear not, so please come along to the Guitar Geek Hangout page on Facebook to have your say, and to see what the other listeners of the Guitar Smarts podcast think all about it. As always, remember to like and subscribe to this podcast so you won't miss the next show. We've got a LinkTree in the description of this podcast that provides you with quick and easy links to our podcast page on Spotify, the backing track solo challenges we've recently produced, and some excellent Spotify playlists related to previous shows. But if you click on one link only, make it the Guitar Smarts Guitar Geek Hangout page on Facebook, where you can get to know many other guitar nerds just like us. Anyway, that's enough from me. Let's get to it. Hello, mate.
Hey, it's that time of the week.
It is that time of the week. I swung by pretty quick this time as well. I don't know about you. Crikey, it seems like yesterday. It was last Friday when we spoke.
Yeah, it really does. The week has completely flown by, in a good way. I've started travelling again a fair bit with work these days, which I quite enjoy. Trips abroad are quite nice, and then trips into central London and stuff. But it makes the week shorter because you're just frantic all week doing stuff, seeing people. And all of that. So you it was you messaged me last night and you said, looking forward to the chat tomorrow. And I just went, my God, is it Friday already? And then I went, yeah, it's Friday already. Yeah, I know. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
It came around pretty quick, didn't it? Yeah, but it's been an interesting one for me this week because it's kind of like the gig I had last weekend. You remember we were talking about, having that long drive back from Devon and stuff, And I was like, after that gig, that's the last gig in my diary for this year. There may be some others later on, but this isn't like, it's usually around this time anyway, where we're kind of like, I have my last gig of the year, that summer wedding period and, when it's the busiest. And so I've got no gigs now for the rest of the year. And in my mind, I was like, okay, now this is guitar modification season. This is now I can get down to some other guitar music related projects because there's things I want to work on. Like I'm trying to build a series of backing tracks and things like that people can get hold of and practice guitar to. And I'm trying to work on some other things. But the main thing I've been thinking this week is like I want to do some work on my guitars again. The Strat I'm pretty happy with. I'm thinking maybe next year I might go back to a more traditional setup with the Strat because at the moment I've got like the rails in the bridge pickup position, so it's like a humbucker, and I've got that little switch, and I'm thinking, I might take that back to a more traditional setup, just 3 single coils, no fancy switching, but maybe just put in a really good set of single coils rather than the original ones, and maybe do some other modifications on that guitar as well. But the guitar I've got that I really want to do something with this year is my Esquire, my Squire single pickup Esquire guitar. I don't know what to do with it. There's a few things that have been suggested on the Guitar Geek Hangout, like Keith Rowley suggested, and this is a superb suggestion, he suggested changing the pickup for like a stacked single coil that you can switch the stack in and out. So it's kind of like not necessarily a humbucker, just like a dual single coil. And Iron Gear have got a stacked Telecaster pickup in their range. So I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to change the pickup in it and put a stack in it and play around with some of the capacitor values that are in the tone circuit for it, because if you don't know, an Esquire, even though it's only a single pickup, it still has a 3-way switch. It just obviously doesn't work like a normal guitar. What mine does is, in the bridge position, it's just the bridge pickup with the tone excuse me, the bridge pickup with the tone control bypassed, right? So it's just straight out. And then the middle position it brings the tone control back in. And then the front position is like this preset capacitor. So it's like bypasses the tone control, but it goes through a different value capacitor, as if the tone control's turned all the way down. Nice. So it's putting everything through it, and it's really
instant
dark.
Woman tone, yeah.
Real woman tone, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I might play around with some of those values and see if I can kind of open up the tone a little bit better. Because I do find that front position a little bit unusable, really. It's got an interesting sound, but it's just too dark. So maybe I'll play around with that, maybe try and find something a lot more subtle that I can just flick to, that could be a bit more like just like a fine tuning. So I'm going to do that, I think. And then Ollie Browning had a really good suggestion. He was saying, think about potentially different frets. And actually, I do think the frets on this Esquire are a little bit narrow compared to what I'm used to, a little bit tall and thin. And I'm kind of like, actually, that's not a bad shout. Maybe I will look into getting it refretted, actually, with something a bit. And then I thought, if I was getting it refretted with something a little bit flat, and it's got quite a thin neck, actually, quite a shallow neck compared to the Strat and Les Paul.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's worth getting the radius changed to be a bit flatter as well. Maybe get it a bit more like a 12-inch radius, something quite flat, because it's got this shallow neck, and get it a bit of a speedy player kind of thing. Get a stack pickup in there, and it could end up being a little bit of a, rather than it being like this vintage thing, like the Esquire, it still looks like a vintage guitar, but ends up being a bit of a real sleeky kind of shreddy player.
Sleeper, as you call it.
A sleeper. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what you should do. Probably more cost effective, depending on how original you want to keep it. Arguably, actually, this is keeping it even more original, is just put a different neck on it. So rather than getting it refretted, it's a bolt-on, right? So go and experiment with a few necks. They're so inexpensive now.
Yeah.
And now that you know how to fret level and crown, what better way to dial in and set it up next than go and get another neck with the radius that you want to mess around with, and some super jumbo frets or whatever profile frets you want with whatever material you want. And then take that old one off, put the new one on, give it a nice little leveling crown, and there you go. You're good to go. Idea. And if you don't like it, you can always unbolt it and put your original one back on, completely unscathed.
Oh, God, I'd never even thought of that. That's such an amazing idea.
It's the path of least return, and probably might be more cost effective, actually, because a refret is not a cheap piece of work if done correctly. And actually, there's nothing wrong with the frets on that neck. So you're probably going to be spending a good couple of £100 to get it refretted, depending on what fret wire you choose. And then if you want that board re-radiused as well, it's going to set you back a fair bit. Whereas for £100, I dare say $100, you can go and get your custom neck already good to go, and just 4 screws, bolt it on.
Something with like a flame maple kind of on the, because that's sexy, isn't it? When you see do you know, like when you look at like Simon Law or MB Guitars, their Instagram, and he's doing. I'm just finishing some necks today, and you can see he's kind of been lacquering a flame maple neck, and it's got that beautiful
it just starts to pop
pattern on, and I'm just kind of. I got drool kind of coming down, and I'm just looking at the picture, just like some kind of. I'm just thinking, imagine having a neck that looked like that, just that tiger flame all the way down the neck. Oh,
I don't know why more people don't do that. I don't know why that hasn't become a thing, right? We've seen the whole roasted maple neck trend and all of that from a feel perspective. Yeah. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's only for the player, right? Because it's all about the top, because that's what the audience will see, and that's what you see when it's hanging on the wall or whatever, or when you open the case. But yeah, I don't know why more guitar manufacturers don't really invest in making the backs of those necks as pretty as they could be. Because I love it.
What about you, dude? Are you got any plans to upgrade or do anything with your guitars? I mean, imagine yours have stayed pretty stock for a while now, right?
Well, the Tokais that I'm gigging, they've been pretty well modified in terms of setup and electronics and stuff. So yeah, I think they're probably going to stay the same. The Gold Top, I don't know. I was playing it the other day, and I don't know whether this was. I think it's a Room Acoustics thing. I think it is, but there's something in the pit of my stomach saying, "Oh, I might need to open it up and have a look." But for the last couple of gigs while I've been playing it, the rhythm, so I've got the Tesla Shark copies of the Slash pickups, which are just absolutely phenomenal, and it's a full rewire. Yeah. The neck pickup is just the quintessential Slash-esque neck pickup. Sounds superb. The bridge pickup is that aggressive rock pickup and equally as good. But when I plug it in at home and play it through the little amps and stuff here at home and balance the pickups, get them kind of, nicely balanced between each other and tonally right, it dials in perfectly. Sounds great.
Yeah. Last
couple of gigs, I've noticed like quite a heavy difference between, and I think it's to do with the Room Acoustics. I think this is it, between the bridge and the neck pickup. Insofar as the neck pickup sounds really strong, warm, bassy, all of those things, and the bridge pickup almost sounds a little bit thinner and lacking in some low end. It doesn't sound shrill or harsh or ice picky. It just loses some of that warmth to it, and I don't know whether there's some sort of phase issue going on with the wiring or that particular pickup where. But it's only happened for the last couple of gigs, and it makes me think that there might be something weird going on with the Room Acoustics or where I was standing. I don't know. But so that's the only mod thing that I need to do to one of those. Everything else, mate, I've put the pickups in that I want to. I've done the setups that I want to. I tell you, the one guitar that I am always tempted to mod, and I haven't got around to doing it yet, is my American Deluxe Strat, the one with the noiseless pickups in it.
Is that the silver one with the black pick guard? Yeah, that's it. That's a sweet.
It's a nice guitar. Yeah. It is, and you've always liked that one. I think you've liked that guitar more than I have.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think you like it more than I do.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of tempted to put something more traditional in terms of, like you said about your Strat. And again, that will be a pretty easy one. So what I would do is I would just, because it's got some really complex switching going on within that one, plus the noiseless pickups. So and I always like the look, as I think you do, of that kind of tungsten coloured type Strat with a white pick guard on and white pickups and all of that. Very Clapton-esque. So I've toyed with changing out the pickups on it and the scratch plate and everything, but I thought, the best way to do that is just to literally lift that entire scratch plate assembly, pickups and all out, just detach it, keep that as another option, and then just drop in an entirely different loaded scratch plate with different pickups. I'd build it all myself, choose the pickups, choose the scratch plate, wire it all up, custom wiring, but then give it a completely different look and go for the more traditional kind of classic pickups rather than the noiseless ones, and see how it fares. Make it more of a traditional Strat, I think.
Yeah. I think that's where I am with my Strat, because I kind of the couple of years ago, modded it with that pickup and that switch, which helps me bring the neck pickup in wherever I am. And what that gives me is, obviously, if I'm in the bridge position, then when I flick that on, I get bridge and neck pickup together. So I get this kind of Telecaster thing. And if I'm in the fourth position, so bridge and middle, I can then flick the neck on and I get all pickups on. And what that gives me is kind of like, well, actually, I think it puts the neck pickup out of phase with the two middle and bridge that are in series. So I end up with this super stratty sound. So it's like, like your fourth position or your second position are usually kind of quacky, that kind of strat. It's just extra quacky. And I love it. It's great for like if I'm in the wedding band and we're doing some 80s tracks like Wanna Dance with Somebody, Whitney Houston or whatever. That 80s kind of chorus clean sound, that's what I always go for. I go for that fourth position with the front pickup in, and I get the super, and a compressor and chorus on a clean sound on the Helix, and it's 80s rhythm all day long,
Yeah.
But I've modded that Strat so that it's good for getting all those different kinds. I kind of look at it as it's like a session guitar, it's a kind of guitar where I'm kind of modded it to get more sounds out of. And I'm kind of now a little bit like, I think I want to take it back to be a bit more traditional, a bit more of a blues machine, get three solid pickups in, and go back to just the 5-way switch and just, enjoy it as a bit more of a traditional instrument again for a while. And then another time I might go back to, I was thinking of putting a black pick guard on it so it's just black, because it's a black Strat with a rosewood net. I'm thinking, non-more black, as Spinal Tap said when the album came out.
Gilmour put, what did he do? Didn't he have black pickguard and then white pickups? Was that Gilmour? I can't remember.
Gilmour, that's right, Strat number one. One of the earliest Strats ever built, I think.
Isn't that the guitar that's achieved to date the biggest price at auction?
Right, yeah.
I think it is, isn't it?
Who knows how much, but I don't know the figure, but I'm sure it's multiple millions, right?
It was a couple of million. I'm sure it was a couple of million. And it went to I think somebody in the United Arab Emirates, I think. Anyway, we go off on a tangent. Yeah, definitely.
But anyway, speaking of other people's tone, what are we talking about this week, Kieran? Sorry to interrupt this conversation. However, if you're a regular listener, then you should definitely come and join us on our Facebook group, The Guitar Geek Hangout. Go and join The Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook now before you carry on with the podcast.
So this is actually a good segue, right? Because we've just proven, right, that in spite of having all these lovely guitars that we have, right, arguably, as guitar players, we spend more time talking about what we're going to do to these damn guitars, or the rig, or everything else, in the quest, in the never-ending quest for this Nirvana-esque, not the 90s grunge band, the Buddhist philosophy of reaching that place where it just doesn't get any better in terms of tone. And so we reached out to the Guitar Geek group a couple of months ago and invited them to tell us topics that they'd like to listen to. And we had some great responses and great suggestions, and we will work through them all over the course of time. But there was a couple of comments all related to like chasing tone, right? Because we all do it. We're all constantly chasing tone. Yeah. And not just for ourselves, like to find our own tone, although that comes into it, right? Finding your own, Matt Oliver, Kieran Amliwala tone, where when we've got it, we're happy with it. But it's also all of those people we're influenced by, right? And that we listen to and that we look up to and that we admire. But most importantly, when we hear them, absolutely pull that guitar face that lets us know and the rest of the world that tone is just hitting us where it hurts, right? Yeah. And then we try and find it and we try and emulate it. Yeah. We try, what gear are they using? What guitar is that? What pickup is it? What capacitor is it? What string gauge is it? You can go down a complete rabbit hole with this to try your best to replicate it in the hopes that you'll miraculously turn into them. So yeah, it's a big topic.
It is a big topic, yeah. And I think I'm just going to reference back actually to some of those suggestions just to give a shout out, really. So we're kind of amalgamating two suggestions here, I think, which is King Fredward Simpson answered the question with quite some excellent answers and suggestions. And one of his was, if you could play any rig from any era, what would you play? Example, Van Halen's 78 rig, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimmy live at Woodstock. Tantalising question. Superb question. It really got me thinking. But also, we're kind of amalgamating that with a good friend, Ollie Browning, who said chasing the tone. Whose suggestion was, chasing the tone and style achieved by others, or going for something more unique. And we were talking about this when we were messaging last night, and we were saying it's kind of like, it's like tone philosophy, isn't it? That we're talking about the philosophy of achieving the tone in your mind. And I was thinking about this morning, actually, and I was kind of like, it's almost it's almost an unattainable thing in a way, not in a sense that you're always disappointed, but in a sense that the target's always moving, isn't it, in a way? Like, because playing guitar through a rig, through something, it's almost a living thing. And you're responding to yourself all the time, aren't you? You're putting something into the system, it's coming back, and you're responding to it with things, like, for example, you go for, a bend in the middle of a solo or whatever, and your amp starts feeding back because you've got this particular frequency going, and then you're kind of like, you're responding to that feedback and it changes what you play. Tone's not a kind of a singular thing, is it? It's not something that you can necessarily define, like, my tone is this, and this. It's this ever-evolving thing that's responding to your playing, and then you respond to it, and then it responds to that response. And it's such an undefinable thing, but it's magical at the same time. And I like the fact that my tone kind of requirements and desires change all the time, because I'm in it for the chase. I'm in it for the journey, not the destination when it comes to tone. How do you feel about it from a tone philosophy point of view?
Yeah, I need to be more in your headspace and accept the journey of it.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly it is a journey, and I accept it's never ending. But for me, I've been on that journey for such a long time, and you'll have heard me talk about, recently, how content I am with my rig and my setup at the moment. And the thing I keep saying is because it consistently keeps giving me what I want. And that for me is the thing that has rewarded me the most, and equally frustrated me the most when it doesn't go my way, is when the tone I'm wanting to get in my head, or the tone that I've had at a recent gig, or even just, dialing in at home, is not reproducible consistently in a way that it makes me go, yeah, that's the tone. Because there's something in it for me around being able to, once I've got my tone and I know everything's right with how my rig is going to behave, that it then allows me to get out of the way of that kind of thing in my head and just concentrate on the playing. But I'm such an OCD freak when it comes to tone, like I guess many guitar players are like that. If my tone is not how I want it to be, it really distracts me from what I'm trying to do on the guitar and how I'm trying to sit in the mix and how I'm trying to play with the rest of the band. Now, sometimes you've just got to reach a point within a gig where you just go, that's as good as it's going to get, and I've just got to get on with it and accept that this is not going to be the ideal tone for me this gig, right? And I've got to focus on the playing. Otherwise, the performance is going to suffer, and the rest of the band is going to suffer as a result, because I'm not in the moment. But then the flip side of that is when you get it right and your tone's doing everything you want it to do, and then you're in the sweet spot with your playing. It just makes for the perfect experience, right? So I don't know whether it's an excuse or not for when I have a bad gig. My tone wasn't right. I couldn't get the right tone. It just didn't sound right to me. I found myself, I'm sure other people have kind of rationalizing it in that way. I don't know. But so yeah, I enjoy the journey. And of course, I enjoy the gear acquisition part of it. And I enjoy the experimenting bit. Yeah. And I enjoy the kind of getting closer to like the sound of people that I kind of look up to and like their playing and all of that. But I don't know. It's like golf. which is a sport that I loved and then quickly fell out of love with, dramatically. It's just like when it goes well, it's brilliant. And then quite quickly it'll go horribly wrong and you don't know why it's gone horribly wrong, and it just angers you and you just go, then I can't perform now, and that's it. So I was quite happy to chuck the golf clubs in the garage after a few years of being really into golf, and they'll come out at some point, but the guitar will always be with me. It's too important in my life not to do that, so I have to wrestle with all of that. I don't know. That's the philosophy part of it for me. That's the kind of bit that I'm probably overthinking, right? Because there is a big fun part of it as well, which is where you started with, which is enjoying the journey and being up for that journey and finding it fun.
And I think it's interesting also looking at other guitarists' philosophy on tone as well. Like one person I really admire for the philosophy on tone is Joe Bonamassa. We talked about him a lot and taking the mickey out of him, but I actually like the way because one of the things he does, and I've done this for gigs before in the past, and really actually enjoyed it, is he's very much of the vein of dime the amplifiers and then chalk everything back with the guitar and your playing style. I love that philosophy. You think about it, what he's saying is, I'm opening up the doors to everything that this device can produce, but I'm going to control how much of it I let out, rather than this accumulative thing that having a rig built of pedals and stuff, where you kind of like everything's. I've set my tone so that it's always letting everything out, but I'm just controlling how much everything is through gain stages and pedals and things like that. That approach of having, a couple of Tweed Twins and maybe a couple of Marshall stacked stuff and having them all dimed, but saying, well, my clean sound is that, but with my guitar set to 1, and I've now got this infinite number of gain stages that are available to me through this, the analog turning of a volume control or a tone control. And I can control that, and that I love, because it's difficult to play like that, but also it's kind of, it's liberating in a way, because you're not defined by these different stages of things on a board. But at the same time, it's great to have pedals for specific sounds and stuff like that. I do find more and more now with my Helix, the sounds and presets that I use for gigging and stuff is more about the fundamental tone from the amp model that I'm using than it is about the number of different modeled pedals and effects and things I can get in. It's I work much more on getting the amp sound much more like what I want. And then if I need a different sound, I often try and think about choosing a different amp model that I need rather than adding a pedal in front of it. So obviously it's easy to do that in a Helix, but I like the idea of I think maybe, and actually that's, if you're a guitarist listening and you think, I just never quite get my tone that I really want to get, maybe you need to go back to the fundamental tone that you have, just guitar straight into amp, and work on getting your amp sounding as close to you want it, and then everything else is kind of salt and pepper, on top of that.
It's definitely the right way to do it, mate, and that's really good advice. And actually, I found myself doing the same when I've used modelling gear, either in a live setting or even in a home setting with like my Spark amp. When I'm trying to get tones, it's all about switching out the amp model and playing with the controls on the amp, even in its modelled state, and then going, it needs a little bit more of this. Right, I'll just chuck one pedal on there that just does a little bit of that. But obviously for my rig and my live setting, I've gone the opposite way, which is to just have the best pedal platform-esque amp that I can, which has got plenty of headroom and takes pedals really well. And it's a really different approach. And it's probably why it's taken me much longer to get the sound that I'm happy with, because I've had to experiment with so many different pedals and the combinations of where those pedals sit in the signal chain and which ones come before the other one, and which ones are going to be always on versus gain staging and all of that. And it's taken me a good few years to get that to a point with this board and the guitar that I'm using for the kind of band that I'm playing in, to go, okay, I'm happy now that this behaves in the right way. But it's been a longer process doing it that way than the one you described, and to be honest, if I had to do it all again, which I could do, there's nothing stopping me, is I'd go back to exactly that philosophy. I'm still a fan of amps. I don't think I'm going to go the modelling route personally for me, but I would go back and go and try out a bunch of amps just with that guitar and just kind of find a place to get them up to a kind of nice gigging pub volume and just see which amps spoke to me in that way. And then I'd have a much simpler pedal board, just pushing little bits of things that I needed to with that tone. It's a good way to think about it, Matt.
So with that in mind then, mate, so if we go back to our kind of questions and suggestions that we got from Ollie and King Fredwood, which is a great name, but so the chasing the tone achieved by others and going for something unique, and if you could play from any rig, from any era, from any guitarist, have you thought about that? Have you thought about a rig of a particular person
Constantly.
that you'd love to play through? I've got an idea who I think you might have.
Well, yeah, I reckon you could probably guess everything on my list, right? And there's this. I'm very predictable in that regard, and it is with the singular notion that those tones just inspire me and make me pull those guitar faces and make me just go, that is such a killer tone, and also make me convince myself, clearly incorrectly, that I could do that. I could do what they're playing. It's the rig that I don't have and the tone that I don't have. But if I've solved that, I could do what they're doing. Clearly, I couldn't, obviously. But I think part of every, this won't count for you because you're a very humble man, but part of every narcissistic guitarist is that inner belief that you could play like that. The thing that's stopping you is not having all of that gear and being able to turn it up to that volume. Which, that's my delusional dark sense when I'm being overly confident. So yeah, I've got a list of a few. The first one that came to mind might surprise you because it's probably not who you think would be on the top of my list first and foremost, but the first tone that I would just love to, because it gives me goosebumps every time I hear it, is Clapton's 24 Nights tone on the track Edge of Darkness.
Oh.
For me, that is the quintessential live rock Strat tone that just hits all the right buttons for me. And I would just love to be able to, and now I've said it all my life and many times on this podcast, that clearly Clapton would still sound like Clapton if you plugged him into a tiny little Line 6 and gave him a Squier Strat. It would just sound like him. But
for sure,
I think that rig and that sound and all the combination of everything just allowed him to be unleashed in a way that people go, no, that's not the best Clapton tone. That was the tone that he had on Stepping Out in the Beano days and or whatever. I mean, he's got so many iconic tones under his belt, but for me, that to me is the quintessential live rock tone that I'd love to just.
I think it might be the most perfect Strat tone. Possibly. I mean, a lot of people will be listening to this going, are you kidding? Stevie Ray Vaughan, all these people. But fair enough, maybe. But yes, that is an incredible tone. I mean, it's monstrous. And so much of that is down to the rig as well as the playing. I think there's a symbiosis there between his ability and his style as a guitarist and the way he kind of pulls. It's so much of Clapton's unmistakable sound is the way he bends a string. Nobody bends a string like he does. It's like time slows down a little bit when he bends a string. If you want to know what I mean, go and listen to.
It's true.
It is true, isn't it? But go and listen to. It's the From the Cradle album, which we spoke about before, and it's the last song, which I think is. What's it called? I'm just checking now on Spotify. It's called Weeping and Mourning? No, Groaning the Blues, which I think is a Muddy Water song. It's a slow, really slow kind of dirge of a blues. And the guitar solo on that is a lesson in how to bend. Because he's doing he's doing slow bends, then he does these bends that kind of he hits the note and then kind of moves quickly up to the note, and then he's doing this amazing vibrato on the note. It's an absolute, it's spine tingling as a blues solo because it's so intense and kind of wrought with emotion. but it's a lesson in how to bend strings. That's the key for me in Clapton's playing. It's like nobody bends a string like he does. You know, it's so unique, and I think that's it's the same for Edge of Darkness. The song he said it's all those little bends he does in the melody and things like that. It's such a fantastic track. I would have. His rig from 24 Nights was on my list as well.
It was,
but also because I know it was a pretty immense rig that he had. That's the last time in his career, I think, that because like now he's pretty much a Strat into a Fender amp guy.
Yeah, like even like little Fender Champs and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And little Tweed Champs and stuff, like small stuff. He's usually just kind of mic'd up. But again, dimed, as you say, just like straight into it, just turn everything onto 11 and off you go.
That's it. But back then in the 24 Nights, that was when he had like a couple of Soldanos and he was going through, I think, a Pete Cornish rack with the tri-stereo chorus for some stuff and, delays, and he had the switching system for different sounds, so it was all very complex rig. But the fundamental tone was still just that creamy Soldano, which was, a Soldano from the 80s. They were basically like a hot-rodded Marshall kind of sound.
They were, exactly.
And he was still using the boost on his Strat to get that tone, but it just went. The thing I loved about his solo tone from 24 Nights, you think about Old Love, that it doesn't sound distorted. It still almost sounds clean, even when it's so loud and stuff. It's like it's so smooth. It's just a perfect sound. But that's on your list. What else is on your list?
Yeah, sorry, man. And I figured it might be on your list as well, but that was the one that I come back to. That for me is evergreen. That guitar tone when I think of something. I'm definitely gonna, after this call's finished, find that backing track and just plug in a Strat and just have a go. That's the thing. It makes me want to play.
Yeah,
right. We're not even listening to it now, but we can hear that in our heads. We'll have to do another playlist for this episode. But it makes me want to play and do some of those bends. That's what a great guitar tone should do from a guitar idol. It's just like I want to play now after I've heard that, and that's what that one does. What's next on yours?
Oh well, for me, I chose. And this might surprise you, some of our listeners, but I actually thought if there's any one rig I'd love to play through, it would be Eric Johnson's guitar rig, specifically the one he had in kind of, was it the 80s or the 90s when he did Via Musicom? I think it was the 80s. And he's obviously big song was Cliffs of Dover, but he's done lots of great instrumental stuff, and he's a great singer. Arguably not as kind of revered as he should be, I think. An incredible guitarist, a really unique style. But what I love about his rig is it's not a rig; it's 3 rigs, and he doesn't have like a fundamental tone that he then adjusts for. He doesn't have like a drive pedal that he puts on to get his, a dirtier sound, or then gain stacking things to get a lead sound. He has a lead sound rig, and he has a dirty crunch rig, and he has a clean rig, and he switches between those different rigs for his different sounds. And he's got a really unique setup, and those individual sounds are so fantastic. His clean sound is like almost ear-piercingly kind of bright, but still really smooth. And, it's got this, TC electronic stereo chorus on it, and it's really wet. He's got these MXR digital delays, and he's got, 2 Fender heads basically going into a stereo Marshall cab, and it just sounds fantastic. And then he's got, the crunch sound, which is, I think, basically like a 50-watt Marshall head. So his guitar goes into an AB box, and one side of the AB box is the lead tone, and one side is the clean or the crunch, and then he's got another AB box which selects between the clean or the crunch. And those 2 AB boxes are basically just sending his signal to different rigs entirely. And his lead sound is just basically a dimed 100-watt Marshall with a what's it called? I think it's called a Chandler tube driver, which is like an old pedal, just an old, and he's got all the EQ down, so he gets this really dark sound. Even though he's on the bridge pickup of a Strat, it almost sounds like the neck pickup of a Les Paul kind of thing. And that's going through an Echoplex, and so he's getting this really cool lead sound. And then if he goes to his crunch sound, that's another Marshall 50-watt head, but not set, obviously, it's just set crunchy. And he's got options then in that rig for a tube screamer and a fuzz face. And so you can't use those pedals in the other two sounds. They're in that rig. And then his clean rig is these two Fender amps. So he's running stereo coming out of like he's got Electro Harmonics Memory Man for a really wet sound. And then the chorus, the TC Electronic chorus, and a MXR rack mounted digital delay for like normal delay stuff. And that's a separate rig all by itself. So it's literally like these three amazing rigs, not many pedals really, just the switching, and then the tube screamer and a fuzz face in like the dirty rhythm rig that he's got. But I would just love to play through that. I mean, can you imagine being on stage with two, really loud Marshalls and this stereo clean Fender thing going on, and I love his playing. One of the things that's very clear when I hear him playing on YouTube and stuff live is that he really has really refined and worked hard on that tone over many years, because it just sounds amazing. I mean, it's just so huge. And I would just love to be on that stage, just encapsulated by my own playing, just to play something on this guitar, on this little string, to pick a string and just feel and hear nothing but that sound be surrounded by it. I would love to play through that rig. And I'm not even the biggest Eric Johnson fan. I don't listen to his music a lot. I enjoy his playing. But the other rig, obviously, that I mentioned him earlier on that I'd love to play is Joe Bonamassa's rig. The recent one.
There's parallels, right? But,
exactly. And they're very similar players in a way. But Joe Bonamassa's, he calls it the amp shanty, where he's basically just using loads of amps, 8 or 10 amps, two Marshall stacks, and he's got Fender Tweed Twins and a couple of Dumble combos and things. He's got all these amps, and they're all basically just turned up, and he's just basically, he might switch between one or two of them for different things, but basically he's just using his guitar volume and manipulating these different amps for their different properties to get different tones. And it's a very subtle thing, the way he does it, but that's another one. It's
very cool. And arguably two players that just have the most monstrous live tone. It is absolutely phenomenal. And there you go.
Yeah.
It is no secret amongst guitar players that there is nothing like having these amps dimed, as you say, loud, turned all the way up, and just being allowed to do what they do best. And these guys, obviously being at the top of their game, have the ability to do that on big stages with amps, that most of us could only dream of affording. But those amps are legendary for a reason, because when you do that with them in a live setting, they just deliver that tone, coupled with the fact that these guys are incredible players. So, yeah. I think, but the real unsung heroes in all of that has got to be the guitar techs required to set up and maintain and keep all of that stuff going, right? I mean, just listening to you describe it gives me like a headache of like, oh my God, I've got to monitor all of this switching and like keep all of this stuff going and working. And yeah, it's not a simple setup for a guitar tech to do. And often, it's the guitar techs. I've seen so many conversations between legendary guitarists and guitar techs where it's the guitar tech that's, when they're good, like, they know what the artist is trying to get from a sound, and they know gear so well that they're able to just go, I think you need to try this piece of kit, or you need to do this and try this in this combination, because I think that's going to give you the sound that you're looking for in your head. And often then the kind of, there's been so many good interviews and stuff that I've seen on YouTube and in guitar mags and rig rundowns and stuff where the artist is the artist and they're kind of getting on with the playing. And there's like, how did you come across that? And how did you know that? I mean, yes, obviously there's like the Bonamassas of the world who are super into their gear and they just know. But there's quite a lot of pro guitarists who are just kind of like, yeah, my guitar tech gave it to me to try out and I loved it.
Yeah.
and it stayed. And I've stuck with it. And you just go, oh.
I was really fascinated by the last time, well, it might be the only time Clapton's ever done a rig rundown on Premier Guitars online. I don't know if you've seen it.
No, I don't think I have. Him doing it, or his guitar tech?
Doing it. It was a guitar tech, obviously.
Right, I might have seen it. Yeah, I might have seen it.
Probably not really interested in that kind of thing, but it was one of the shortest rig rundowns ever. You know, sometimes you get somebody like John Shanks from Bon Jovi doing a rig rundown, and he's got 16 Friedman amps, and he's got 16 pedal trays in his switching rig. And, that rig rundown's about 40 minutes long. I think Clapton's rig rundown, the whole thing's about 10 minutes. And one of the things that's very apparent when John Bollinger from Premier Guitars is talking to Dan Durnsley, I think his name is, who's actually a luthier, a fantastic luthier, about it, is that Dan has very little to do. I mean, he basically changes the strings on the Strat for every gig. Clapton's guitar's going straight into the amp, and there's one amp which is actually a Howard Dumble, is it Howard or Alexander Dumble? I can't remember. Both maybe, but it's a Dumble built Fender Bandmaster. And I thought, that's the first time, apparently it's still a Fender spec amp, but just built by Howard Dumble. So it's not like one of Dumble's amps. It's the first time I've heard that Dumble built an amp for someone that wasn't a Dumble amp. It was he's been commissioned to build it as per Fender's spec, which kind of, I guess that says something about Clapton's weight in terms of getting things done. When Howard Dumble's renowned for being someone who chooses who he makes amps for, but if Clapton comes along, then I'll make you whatever you tell me to make, kind of thing. So he's playing through these two Dumble built Bandmasters. His guitar goes through a wah pedal that's battery powered. It's not even on a power supply or a board, and the only other thing he's got is a switch that turns the Leslie cabinet on or off, because for his chorusy kind of type stuff, when he's doing Wonderful Tonight, he just turns the Leslie cabinet on. It's not a pedal or anything. And that's it. That's his rig. And he's got 3 Strats. He's got a main Strat, a spur Strat, and then another spur. And that's all he plays. And
he's becoming less attached to which Strat that is now, right?
Yeah,
obviously, in the Blackie and Brownie days, he had his kind of number one. But he's just like, whatever, it's a Strat.
And he said, that's it. The guitar tech said, well, they're just the standard custom shop Strats. They're what you would buy if you bought the custom shop Clapton Strat. They're set up by Todd Krause the way Clapton likes it. So he said, I don't even have to set these guitars up. They come out of the box set up how Clapton already likes it. So I just have to change. So every gig, basically, I just have to put 2 amps down, one that's running, one that's a spur, set up a wah-wah pedal in a Leslie cabinet, change the strings on the 3 Strats, and change the strings on an acoustic. Even the acoustic in this last rig rundown wasn't even an electro acoustic. They were micing it up on stage because Clapton doesn't like the sound of an electro. So he just has to change the strings, basically. I was like, can you imagine touring around the world as Clapton's guitar tech? You'd have nothing to do other than just to hand him a Strat when he wants the electric and handing him acoustic when he wants the acoustic. There's no constant changing of guitars for different songs and different tunings, and setting up a rig with MIDI control and things like that, and pedals and batteries and power supplies and things. It's just got to be the dream guitar tech gig. You know what I mean? And what a tone he gets. I mean, again, a reminder to get the fundamental tone right. You hear Clapton's tone these days, it's still monstrous, still beautiful.
It really
wide open Strat tone, and he's going from his Strat into a standard Fender Bandmaster combo. It's something to behold, really, isn't it?
And I'm sure, maybe I've imagined this, but I'm sure when I've watched that rig rundown, I'm sure the guitar tech says most of it's coming from him. It's his fingers, right? It's him. Most of it. This is why it's this simple. Because I think there's almost like a disbelief that it's all just this simple. That's it. Just like, most of it's just him, right?
Yeah.
It's just.
And actually, there was a good conversation when Joe Bonamassa did an interview with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and one of the questions was about how did he get Clapton to come and perform with him, and he didn't think he would. He'd never really met Clapton before, but he knew someone who knew him, and he got a letter to him, and Clapton agreed to come and be at the Albert Hall gig that he did back in 2009. And he said, I'll be there at 4 p.m. And Bonamassa said, literally at 4 p.m. on the dot, Clapton turns up, and he said he's got a brand new, Clapton Strat in a case, and he's got a Fender Tweed Twin that's brand
that's
new.
So cool.
He said that's brand. He said it still had the card on the top that tells you the preferred settings. So obviously he's just brought a new amp with him, and a monster cable straight from. And that's all he did. He just turned up on stage, put his amp down, got his guitar out on a stand, and plugged straight into it. And he said, in soundcheck when he played, he said it was like listening to Blues Breakers. Beano said it was just that sound. It was like nothing. else. But the guy's literally just turned up and plugged in. Didn't even have his guitar tech with him. He's left his guitar on stage. And God, can you imagine that? I mean, that's just mental, isn't it?
It's just Clapton, isn't it? It's just Clapton. It is. It's in his fingers, man. That's so cool. I want to know where those new things came from. Like, in part of me, it literally just like got someone to just send them over to him. I just need I'm going to be in London. Yeah. Just made a phone call. Yeah. Can someone just get me one of my Strats and this amp? And so it's not even probably from his collection, which is in storage somewhere, and his guitar tech's going to go and get it from Surrey. It's just like, I'm going to the Albert Hall. Just deliver it. So someone probably from Fender headquarters in London. Exactly that. Kind of went, right, take one of these new ones off, check it out, get them both down there. That's exactly it. They've probably got a room at Artist Relations in Fender headquarters in the UK that's just got, they're like, Clapton's the only one who doesn't seem to have a guitar amp and a guitar in the boot of his car all the time. We just got to keep some stuff here all the time just in case he's got a gig at the Albert Hall. Which, he's done a couple of times. Man, that's mental. That's absolutely mental. That's brilliant. I love that. I love that story. So Clapton's guitar rig for sure, man. There's many others. Like, Stevie Ray Vaughan, we've said it. Yeah, I'd love to play that rig off live at El Macambo just because it's monstrous. And I want to know how he had his guitar set up, and was he playing 13s on there with a high action and, all of these kind of amps and how was he using that tube screamer to push that amp? Because I can't get a tube screamer to do what I want it to, but he managed to. And all of those mythological, I'm not sure that I've said that right. All of those kind of like urban legend type stories around Stevie Ray Vaughan's rig, right? I mean, that inspired generation after generation of artists after him, to quest for that tone. I mean, look at, John Mayer, an incredible player in his own right, whose tone I'd love to try and emulate. I mean, I built a pedal board based on some of the pedals that he uses or clones of them to try and get John Mayer's tone. But that's effectively steeped in Stevie Ray Vaughan's tone in the main. To the point where John Mayer went and hired Stevie Ray Vaughan's guitar tech as his live guitar tech. Because, if anyone's going to give me, mate, it's coming back down to the guitar tech as the unsung hero in all of this.
Yeah, I think you could be right. A huge amount of that is, those people that can maintain the instruments we play and the gear that we go through and getting things set up just right. Yeah. That's a very, very good point, actually. One of my favourite videos. Have you seen that video of Stevie Ray Vaughan like starting a song? He's on TV. I think he's on like Austin City Limits or something. He breaks a string. Amazing. He carries on with the song, and he manages to kind of you can see him. He just looks to the guitar tech. What's the guitar tech's name? Is it Rene Martinez or something? Yes. Is that the guy? Yes. It's John Mayer's guitar tech now, and he kind of he gives him the slightest look. He's playing and he just goes like that, and immediately within like 5 seconds it goes to he's singing the intro where the music's kind of stopped for a second, like a blues sometimes does, and in the meantime Martinez is disconnecting the strap from the Strat that's just brought the string, takes the Strat away, and as he pulls one Strat away he puts another Strat in front of him. And Stevie just kind of quickly plugs in the jack and starts playing along whilst Rene's putting the strap on that Strat, and then just walks away. And it's like this seamless change. It's so amazing. It's like a Formula One pit stop for a guitarist. It literally really is. But you got to go and see that. It just Stevie Ray Vaughan breaks a string. If you just put that into YouTube, absolutely, and then watch that, it's amazing. Just what a hero guitar technician for being so quick with the next guitar. But he didn't even have to stop the song and get set back up or anything. It doesn't drop a beat. Doesn't drop one beat. I mean, he literally just unplugs the guitar. The guitar disappears because Rene's like, gone, I've got that. Here's your new guitar from behind him. He's bringing the guitar in front of him. Stevie Ray plugs it in and starts playing on the one straight away. Yeah. And then Rene's like, I'll get the Strat back on for you there whilst you're holding the Strat, playing and singing. It's just mind-boggling. Absolutely
poetry, man. Poetry. So that rig I'd love to. There's so many. There's so many rigs I'd love to try. Obviously, I've mentioned this gig a number of times before, but the Guns N' Roses 92 Paris gig, just the tone that Slash has on that entire gig, but what he particularly does with his gold top, his now infamously stolen gold top Les Paul that's been cloned by Gibson since. the sound of that is just phenomenal. But I mean, there's no secret to that rig. That, again, it's a Marshall Jubilee, absolutely running on full with a Les Paul plugged directly into it, and just some decent pickups and the reverb of the stadium. It's just killer guitar tone. Lukather's rig in the 40th anniversary Amsterdam concerts. I don't know if you've seen that, but he does a rendition of While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
Yes,
and just his tone in that is just sustained for days and just beautiful. I'd love to play that rig. So many, mate. So many great rigs. I mean, I echo what you said. I'd love to play through, Stevie Ray Vaughan's rig. I'd love to play through Bonamassa's rig, Lukather's rig, obviously. I mean, any of Lukather's rigs. Another one as well I'd love to play through is, John Mayer's rig, but actually Keith Urban as well. I'm not a huge country fan, not a huge fan of his, but he's another person whose rig rundown I've seen, and he's got a plethora of really nice amps, really select pedal choices, and very subtle changes between different tones, and and then another one I'd love to play through is Steve Vai, because that's a pretty, he's got some cool sounds in his rig. He does.
He uses some interesting, an interesting balance of, old school analog tech and modern effects, and, the Axe effects and things like that. Really, again, you can see the philosophy all these people have in tone. Some people want, the more fundamental classic tube amp and guitar straight in. Some people are advocates for modern technology without kind of compromising on the fundamental tone. Some people are just, just love the modern tech. Everything should be considered. If you're on the hunt for your own tone, you still haven't found it yet, consider everything. You never know how you might find it.
Do you know what? That's so true, because oftentimes when I've tried to, I forget who said this. I think it might have been Hendrix, but I may have this wrong. But there's a legendary guitarist who was interviewed about, tone and their philosophy on tone. And they said, and I think it was Hendrix, he kind of said, like, you either need to have like so many influences that you've got too many to count, and your tone is just an amalgamation of all of them in so many different ways that it then becomes your own tone. Or you need to just lock yourself in a room and not listen to anybody and find your own tone like completely in a vacuum, and then that is your own tone. Obviously, I think the point he was making is that the latter is not really achievable, right? And so while everyone was like raving about his tone and his philosophy to tone and the fact he's doing it all differently to other players of the time, he's kind of like saying, I've just listened to everybody that I can and tried to draw from everybody and take little bits that I like and somehow find my own tone through all of it. That's how I've got there. So I think there's something true to be said in that. And I also think around tone, something that has kind of got clicked in my brain in the last few years is that the room acoustics and the environment and all of those things have such a big effect on it, and the importance of being able to flex your tone and make changes to your rig in a way that you wouldn't normally do in a kind of isolated home setting to get your tone to be your tone within the mix of a band is a thing that you kind of have to really liberate your mind from, around what you normally set your settings to be and what you think they should be. It all dramatically changes when you get to a gig and a certain venue and how the rest of the band acoustics are and all of that. And so finding your tone, you've got to be very flexible and amenable to making those types of changes with EQ predominantly, when you're in different settings. And that's something that often frustrated me, is like, why can't I get my tone? I've kept all the same settings that I had at home, and nothing's changed, and it just sounds so different. And it's just like, well, it's the same rig and it's the same you, but it's the room that it's being broadcast in that's different, and that's the bit that you've got to work against.
And you're absolutely right. There's things that are fundamental to what you're hearing sometimes when you listen to a record that you forget are even there. Like, for example, let's say you're trying to get, one of my favourite clean tones ever is from Slow Dancing in the Burning Room, John Mayer, such this amazing kind of neck pickup strat tone that he got on that. And you think, well, that's a strat into a Dumble or a two rock, a proper loud, high headroom, clean amp, And then you try and set up a rig like that, and you think, well, I just can't quite get the same thing. But you're forgetting that's what the actual signal chain there really is: the guitar into an amp, into a very specific microphone, going through a very specific preamp into a analog desk that's then been treated and EQ'd afterwards. That's then been mixed and then mastered, and that guitar tone you're hearing when you put that CD on actually may be somewhat unrecognizable to the sound that may have heard in the room. But what you're hearing is this kind of finished, produced product that's influenced and changed by so many things other than just what that amp and that guitar and those hands did in the room. Yeah. So sometimes you're chasing something that you can't achieve because there are too many things in that chain that are not. They're just simply not achievable for you to get. You're not in Electric Ladyland Studios going through an old Neve desk with old 60s compressors and old microphones and things like that. Sometimes you just have to kind of try and remember it's the essence you're trying to capture, not the exact thing. Are you in the ballpark or are you in the same room kind of thing? Sometimes ballparks is all that's achievable.
I think so, buddy, and I think that's really good advice because we all, to some extent, get like to the point where we're just chasing these little marginal gains, but sometimes those marginal gains come at a very real physical expense of having to buy more stuff, and we all do it. It's fun, right? But really, are you spending money in the right place for the right reasons to just get some marginal gain? And the other expense is it comes at the expense of the most important thing that we all know, but we all kind of like to overlook because it's harder, and that is to spend the time practicing and playing those notes to try and emulate the vibrato and the approach and the feel and the note choice and the timing and making time stand still with a bend like Clapton does. That will get you from the 80% to the 100% tone that you've got in your head. It's that last bit, which is the playing. So kind of get to a point where it's close is close enough, right?
And if you're not quite there, just drench it in reverb and delay. That's just. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I definitely know what you mean.
If the curry's not tasty, just chuck some salt on it.
Just put some more spice on it. Season it up. Season it up with some reverb. There is nothing that a good bit of spring reverb or a boost pedal can't fix.
So true. So true. Hides all those bum notes.
It really does.
Right, man. I think we wrap up there.
I think so, buddy. Good chat. It was a good one.
Chat. Tone philosophy. We can come back to this one, I think, again in the future because this is a never-ending conversation. But I think we've come up with some interesting thoughts there. And again, just to thank King Fredwood and Ollie Browning again for making great suggestions for topics because every guitarist loves talking endlessly about how to get the tone that they want and the never-ending chase that it is. I'm after I hang up, I've got another few minutes before I need to speak to someone at work, and I'm putting Edge of Darkness on there. I'm putting it on loud on the speakers in front of me, and that's it. That's going to set me up for the rest of the day. Well, enjoy, buddy. Enjoy Edge of Darkness. Look forward to having another catch up with you next week, and
yes, mate.
Take care, chasing tone.
And you, buddy.
All the best, mate. Speak soon.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. If you like what you hear, then why not give the rest of our shows a good listen too? And if you love our podcast or are a regular listener who wants to support the show even more, then consider buying us a coffee over on our Buy Me a Coffee page. Anyway, best wishes and see you next time on the Guitar Smarts podcast.